And it goes a little something like.
Hello everyone. Today on Sumi Huddle, we're joined by Zane. He is a passionate mental health advocate from Uganda, and he's dedicated to empowering youth and breaking the stigma around mental health. He's also the founder of Awesome Mind Speaks. It's a youth-led organization transforming mental health awareness through school programs, advocacy campaigns, and community partnerships. Zane also works with the UN Joint Program on Adolescents and Youth in Uganda. He advocates for mental health integration into national youth policies and frameworks. Beyond the policy, Zane explores intersection of mental health with gender and environmental issues as well. And he wants to make sure that young people's problems are being addressed holistically. And we are so excited for this conversation. Welcome, Zane.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. The first time we met before actually recording this podcast, we got to know each other a little bit, and you had a chance to talk about your story. I want to dive into it a bit more and ask you, you are really open about your mental health journey, especially for young people. It's a huge part of your life. You also talk a lot in your work about how in Uganda, mental health challenges are still often misunderstood and stigmatized. Can you take us back
Mhm.
beginning and share how you first saw these barriers, how they affected you and others around you, and what inspired you to tackle them?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I'll go back to how I've been raised as a young man and in a community that was very constraining. I used to live with my single mom and my stepdad and a few siblings. And because of how like the family was constructed, I was the eldest and I could run all the household and could juggle between going to school and working and caring for the house. So amongst them, there are things that you couldn't express yourself about as the structure of a home looks like. You're supposed to be obedient and you're supposed to be listening, and a good child was one who didn't speak up and I could be like, silent and just absorb all that. So that alone like kind of like made me struggle with school and performance and juggling and balancing. But later on, I broke through. I'm through again the kindness of people and like me being intentional about what I do. And by then, literally, I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't attach a name or feeling to anything that was happening. I could just know that, okay, I'm not happy or I'm upset or this is going on without actually attaching a name to it.
Mhm.
So later on, I joined school, high school, and it was a shift high school. Like I could study in the afternoon, but then like still I could go to work, and then in the evening I'm going to school. And like I was just like, you know what I'm studying to get, I'm already getting now. So maybe I should just, let it go and just continue with work. But of course, at that point, like the dreams and the visions were narrowed by the community that I live in. So I couldn't see past a few coins and a few shillings at that time. But for me, because I was still in that dream, it made me happy. I'm like, oh, I'm getting money, so I could easily like drop out. So I stopped school for one term, and then I could like go to the neighborhood. Like there was a small nursery school where I could volunteer, and from then I met a few good friends who told me, "But you have this good, amazing heart, and this. Why don't you go back to school? How can we help?" And for me, in my mind, school wasn't a priority at that time because I'm like, I'm already exhausted. And they just, encouraged me to. And then later on, I joined at school again. I started studying, and by then, the school I joined like was a boarding school. I got to meet people who are well informed, people who have been in the school system, people who have been like, in the uptown kind of lifestyle. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So then, of course, I kind of struggled to fit in because I was this child from like this humble background in a school that has like kind of like posh and midlife kind of young people. So lifestyles were totally different. even conversations were totally different. So me being the good child, I had to keep quiet always because that's what I know a good child does. But like these are kids who are very challenging. So I got bullied in school a bit because of that, and I didn't know how to navigate through. But I remember what helped me was the sense of responsibility. Growing again in the family where I had to do responsibility, this also transferred into the school that I could easily ask a teacher, how can I help? I could easily connect with the administration, how can I help? Some responsibility. And every time there was something going on in school, they could call me to coordinate. They'd be like, hey, Zane, come and coordinate this. Well, we are having a school debate. We are having this. Come and coordinate that. So that alone helped me kind of bridge the gap between like being like a little bit quiet and also balancing the school attitudes of students to responsibility. So because they knew I had control over who participates in what and who doesn't, some of them started to become my friends little by little. We started communicating a little bit more. And like things grew, I became a prefect. And I know like sometimes things work in a mysterious way. I became a health prefect in my school. And like I remember turning around how like school sick bays were like, at that time, things were very disorganized. We used not to have medication. We used to have a lot of kids with asthma attacks, and that all changed. So, but while changing the physique, a lot of times, like because I was struggling to fit in, and I noticed also a few young people were struggling to fit in. And also because I couldn't talk so much about my background because I could fear that, oh, how are people going to see it? But also in our culture, there are certain things you don't talk about. Like things of the home are supposed to be kept at home, like you don't talk about them, you don't disclose, regardless of how you feel. So I imagine that this was also a gap. So we could be happy, we could be doing things, but at a certain point, I could just go and I just want to have my alone time because I can't fit in. And sometimes you have conversations with friends and they make jokes. And sometimes I'd be like, I don't know why sometimes people make jokes and they just pinpoint to your actual life. And you're like, okay, for them, it's a joke, for you, it's not. But you have to laugh along. So yeah, that is when I was in school. Things pretty much got going. I wasn't the best of performers. Then I was a very slow learner. I'm still a slow learner. Takes me time. But things went on. We finished our O level, which is the lower level. And while we were that, and we were waiting for our results to come, one of our classmates died by suicide, like a day to the exams coming back. And for us, it was a very, very big shock. But we did not know how to digest it. And because suicide is a taboo in Uganda, it's always swept under the carpet. We are not allowed to talk about it or to mourn or what, and the school and the public criticizes the act, and like they don't give it attention. But for us, as people who were studying with this person, who were like friends with this person, and people who never saw it coming because it was this one person who was always happy, who was like always conversational, he was the guy you could chill with, and cool kid and everything. And then for us to hear that this has happened, it was a very, very big shock. But like we did not know how to talk about it. We did not know how to acknowledge it. We did not know how to live with it. So we just had to keep quiet around it and just see it go. But over time, of course, you are studying in a class, you're going back to a school where you see that this happened, and it kind of like scared, feelings are happening all over the place, but you don't know how to talk about them. But because I used to participate in like school programs and activities, I started learning about different concepts on sexual reproductive health, on climate. We used to do like certain projects. We used to do governance and all these amazing programs that we do in school, but there wasn't any program that was talking about how we feel. People could come with it gives you that excitement and the feelings, but it does not quench the emotional thirst that comes after all these things are gone. It does not unpack the memories that you have actually gone through. So that happened, that we could be excited, but after the entertainment is over, again, you go back in your bubble of like, okay, I don't know how I feel about this. So later on, when I finished school, that's around 2018, I come out, still I joined like different Peer Educators Academy, different conferences and programs. And this is when I come across friends who had more knowledge on mental health than I was. And we could talk about it. And they're like, okay, because we used to think when you talk about mental health, we are talking about madness, quote unquote. So it's like a very stereotypical kind of term and word that people use here. When you talk about mental health, that is what is going to come in people's minds. So we're like, we cannot go around talking about this because people are going to call us crazy as well. So they were like, no, we can do it actually. So we started as a campaign. Some of them, like we started with a school outreach where we went and we didn't actually know what we were doing, but we made a few internet researches and we got the main concepts, and then we went in schools. And I remember organizing my first event in 2019. It was during the World Mental Health Day. And I went back to the same school that I studied and I told them, hey, we have this and we want to do it. Can you give us the platform to talk to students? They're like, but our students are very fine. Nobody is like this. That topic of yours you're bringing is not like, we don't have mad people in this school. Everyone is okay. And we're like, no, so it's not about being this is what we're going to talk about. We're even going to do painting, we're going to do coloring and this and this. And they're like, okay, because you're our student before, it's okay, but be careful with what you say. So it was then that a lot of like dots started opening up. So adding my personal story that I didn't have anyone to open up to, and then going in a school where I was bullied, but also I imagined that nobody had anyone to open up to, and then taking an event and I'm seeing that also the school system itself is not open. So for me, I saw, okay, this is a very, very big barrier that we need to address. And then we did the event. It was successful. A few challenges here and there because it was our first time. And then later on, I really got deeper into it and I wanted to pursue it. But some of my friends really, they weren't into it. Some of them dropped off. Some of them, they're like, because of how the society perceives the topic, it's not something we want to go on with. They're like, okay, that's okay. So I kind of stayed alone. And I'm like, I still really need to do this. I feel it in me because when I talked to people that day during the event, I saw myself talking to myself about things that really were going on. And then I know I kept on chasing. I remember starting and I say, I'm going to start an organization that does mental health. And that was in 2019. I didn't have an idea, but I just said, you know what, someone has to do something about something. And then that is when I started Awesome Mind Speaks as a very small online and a few activities going on. Started doing some talks. I remember in 2019 around July, that's when like I started. I did my first activity. And then before I knew it, COVID came in as well. And that was a huge barrier because if we can realize any barriers to mental health, they manifested a lot during 2020, during the COVID-19. That's when we were locked with people we never wanted to be locked with. That's when we couldn't actually speak. That's when we couldn't digest feelings. But because you're constrained in this one environment, all the things that you have been suppressing all came back from way childhood. you are locked with maybe a perpetrator of violence, you are locked with your stepdad, you are locked with, and like you're not going to school anymore, you're not connecting with friends, and this is when everything happened. But I was so sad because I was also locked down that I can't do anything about it. Like I had just started, I didn't have a lot of knowledge and I couldn't do anything about it. So all these barriers, I saw that, okay, people are being given food, people are being given supplies, people are having masks and what, but nobody is literally talking about how we are feeling and we are stuck and I'm stuck. So yeah, that's what a lot more ignited my passion to talk about mental health and, create solutions as small or big. I think every single solution matters. So yeah, that is how I noticed some of these barriers and I started doing something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's been 6 years since you started the organization. Wow, that's
Yeah.
really
Oh, yeah.
It's also like I always
Yeah.
it's inspiring to me. I think I take note of this with a lot of our guests on this, but I think it really reflects on your journey too. A lot of people that we have as guests here keep saying that, oh, I come across this problem, and then they tell us this like long story of how that problem, that challenge that would have stopped somebody else actually, made them to go further, to find a solution, to do something about something. And it's always very inspiring to me. Sometimes I feel like giving up in face of challenges and problems, and then I remember these conversations.
Yeah.
It's always nice. I think your
Yeah.
your journey is also, where you are right now is, shaped by your personal journey, and that's sweet to see. And one thing that I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, because we can see how personal this is for you, but I think you also acknowledge
Mhm.
how it's, about culture, about school system. So mental health, especially youth mental health, we can see that it's also shaped by the systems around these young people. And I'm wondering, because of your work with, for example, UN, you work with the UN Joint Program on Adolescent and Youth in Uganda, and your other work with your own work. I'm wondering, could you share some examples of what's being done on the ground to address the more systemic challenges? How is this helping young people in your idea?
Yeah, I think like me joining some of these programs and like what they're all voluntary, doing it because of like the passion in it. And I get the chance to actually incorporate mental health into the programs that maybe they're doing. For example, I would say the UN itself. You would see a lot in many countries. The UN is doing a lot of work on strengthening maybe like environment and climate, maybe ending war, maybe creating peace, providing food, sexual reproductive health. But you will find that not a lot of UNs are actually tackling mental health in their programs. They have like concepts of like social cycle support, I would say, but like in most cases, that is not really what young people are looking for. Young people are looking for someone they can talk to. I always say that when I do like some work on sexual reproductive health, let me say I've given out like sanitary towels to young girls. I'm like, okay, I have met the physical need, but there is that emotional preparedness for even this young person to, use this sanitary towel as well. So in most cases, that has not been the case. And it's because of like misinformation and disinformation. It's because of the policies that have not been, favorable, and also cooperation frameworks that people are working around with. So for me to be participating in these things and programs is to be like, hey guys, look here. I think there is a big gap between what you're providing and how prepared young people are to take that and comprehend. Like there is a lot of stress that comes with poverty. There is a lot of stress that comes with food insecurity. So when you come and give me money, it's a very big good gesture that I would love. But because I've been not having and I've been struggling emotionally, that excitement is going to make me misuse that money. I'm either going to overspend it, or I even don't know how I'm going to start. So when you help me talk through my problems that have been going on, sometimes the solution is even in front of my eyes, and I needed someone to talk to for me to realize. So that is the addition I bring onto the programs. And then informing national level policies and framework. We know Uganda is one of the countries that is really behind when it comes to mental health. It is ranking like top 6 in Africa with depression levels, so, and in all these, very many young people are affected. Our population is 75% youth under 35 years. And these are young people who are actually going through daily challenges. We have poverty, we have peace and security challenges going on. We have very many issues going on. We have like one of the biggest refugee settlements here in Uganda. And so you are seeing a lot of cross culture that is going on. If there is no mental health system to support that, then it becomes a very big challenge. We had a law on mental health that actually criminalizes people. When you say that someone had to go to maybe like a mental health hospital, in the mental health law, the words could be detained, so that those are the terms that the law uses. And so sometimes when you look at, okay, how can I seek a service, and you're relating to a mental health law that uses that such words like detention, like isolation, you get scared. So those are some of the things that I'm trying to see that can be changed. Right now, it's been updated. While it's been updated, there's still challenges. There are a lot of young people who are kind of like, detained, who are like taken in rehabilitations without their own consent. There is very many are struggling. So those are some of the issues that I'm trying to actually shine a bright light on, and also ensuring that there is youth-friendly service provision in mental health, because there is a very, very huge age gap between mental health service providers and the young people currently. And this has been informed by, the education levels. People who have done psychiatry are way older than us, the young people who are supposed to be consumers of that service. And because of that, it creates a huge gap. But also then it means that we have very less service providers. In Uganda, we have only 53 psychiatrists, and our population is over 40 million 40 million people. So that means it's a very huge gap, you know. So, and most cases we have the psychologists who are way older, like in their 40s, 50s, and like the conversations are totally different. So when we talk about it, when we highlight this and we say that, okay, the UN has programs that are now incorporating mental health, that means more opportunities are going to be opened up. That means the governments are going to adopt mental health as a priority. So that is how I try to help. We are not yet there, but I think we are moving somehow, slowly by slowly, because I just learned that recently the mental health budget was increased in our health budget to come. But still the gap is that most of this money, most of it is going into administrative costs and and sponsoring the national referral hospitals. There's nothing going into community health cares for mental health. There's nothing going to support maybe local NGOs that are doing mental health. So the gap is still there. The information gap as well, because at the end of the day, systems and structures in countries look at mental health only in a curative way. They don't look at it as like a police issue. They don't look at it as an information issue. They don't look at it as a lifestyle issue. So we need to also see how do we now start looking at mental health as a lifestyle issue, as an information gap issue, so that it is not as much stigmatized as it is now.
It's good to hear the improvements, but I can see that you have a lot on your hands. You're challenging this big stigma. It's a lot to deal with, but again, I think your responsibility taker personality can handle that. You also
Yeah,
mentioned
trying.
you work with the gender part of the issue, or there are teenage pregnancies or sexual reproductive health. And in your experience, do you see any differences in how mental health is perceived or stigmatized for young men versus young women? What are some key considerations or challenges when supporting young people of different genders around mental health? We know the experience can be really different. So how do you handle that when working with young people?
Interesting. Very, very recently, I've become more passionate about gender equality and gender itself when it comes to mental health, because we need to agree that everyone is different, and young people are not a monolithic group. Every young person has their different needs, but so are both genders. Everyone has very different needs. I know women are very much oppressed and very much face a lot of stigma and discrimination when it comes to mental health. We see a lot of gender-based violences that happen. And when we talk about the gender-based violence, the physical aspect always comes up a lot because there is a lot of pain that is inflicted, but also there is a lot of emotional pain that comes with that. There is a lot of trauma that comes with that when a woman is abused, for example, victims of rape, victims of physical assault. There is a lot of trauma that comes with that, and the depressions that come with that. So the way they kind of process these feelings is totally different. So women are very, very much more affected. When you go in rural communities where they don't even have a chance to speak out, to advocate for themselves, becomes a very, very big issue. And like the manipulation that comes with the perpetrators itself, constrained in this bubble of like fearing for themselves and fearing for their lives. So you add that, and then they don't have anywhere to go or say something. So you'll find that depression among women is higher. You'll find that trauma is higher among women, and this affects them at large. When we look at teenage pregnancies currently, I say that Uganda has one of like the highest teenage pregnancies right now at 24% rate, and very many young girls are mothers, teenage mothers are getting into marriages very early. They're forced into marriages. And this is a young person who otherwise could have been experiencing childhood development, playing, connecting with their friends, being a child as they should be. But now this person is maybe carrying another child. So in many cases, there's going to be a lot of early childhood development missed because they're not going to have the time. There's going to be a lot of like social isolation because now, as a young girl, because you have given birth, the community and the society sees you as a woman. So you're going to miss out on you being a child and experiencing the feelings and the emotions of a child. You're going to be, you're going to have a burden of responsibility that you can't even comprehend. And you are maybe with a man who is way older than you, and you cannot even say anything. You cannot voice yourself. You cannot speak up for yourself. So you are living in fear. The emotional toll it takes on you is even way beyond clinical terms of mental health. It's very much affecting you. And these are the things that add up to, inform clinical terms like depression, like trauma, like anxiety, because you're scared every day in the life you live in. So these are realities actually that happen, and we see them. the justice system is still lacking in defending a woman and also providing social psycho support. Because in most cases, when a woman goes to report maybe at the police, there isn't a lot of like emotional support provided to them. And this alone also gets them scared because they don't know how to process these feelings. I remember a few months ago, I was facilitating a session. It was with women as well, and we were talking about mental health and trauma. And like this woman didn't know even what mental health was. But while I was teaching the session and facilitating the session, things got to her, and she just broke down and started crying. And she's like, "This has been happening. My husband did this to me. He beat me. He came to my work and disorganized everything. And I wanted to report him, but he said when I report him, he's going to go and rape my daughter." These were very scary moments. These were very. So you look at such a situation and you're like, okay, how many women like this are going through such and nobody is telling them about it in terms of emotions and processing? So I've gained that passion to speak out more, and recently I've been the male change maker on teenage pregnancies, in collaboration with the Dutch embassy on the women's rights. I'm saying that at the end of the day, this could even be defilement, because if a teenager, imagine you are 16, you are 15, you are below 18, there is no justification of it. So, yeah, that is how I come in to talk about mental health and gender and teenage pregnancies and the inequalities that that comes with. There is a lot of it. Yeah, and it's a very, very emotional,
Yeah.
it's a very emotional conversation. But I acknowledge that there is a lot of strong women who have risen up currently. There is a lot of strong girls who are fighting barriers every day, being courageous, being strong, supporting each other. So that gives me joy to see that there is change. But also, we know that there is a lot more that needs to be done.
Yeah.
There is a lot more, yeah.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with my friend who had been in an abusive relationship, and when I asked her, "How did you process it, and how was it like after the relationship?" And to my surprise, she said, "I'm putting aside the physical violence, the emotional trauma it had on me was even like way worse." And like you said, the physical part always comes first in our minds, but that was like an enlightenment moment for me where I said to myself, I knew about the emotional part, but I always thought physical would be, worse. And that's how I was inspired to see that you also, as a mental health advocate, helping the woman out there. It's really, really important, in my opinion.
Yeah, because also like sometimes we ask the question of why do women who get abused end up not reporting or staying with the abusers? And that question is an emotional one. It's not even a physical one, because you're scared for yourself, and maybe sometimes when you're a victim of violence, your brain is so much in the defensive mode, so you don't want to leave or do something that is going to upset the perpetrator of violence. And that is an emotional issue. It's not a physical issue. So once we address that, I think it will give a lot of women courage to report, walk away, and be strong and independent women.
When you guys were talking about, gendered aspects of mental health and also the systemic things, I was also thinking a lot about our own country. Me and Umay are from Turkey, and there's a lot of democratic backsliding going on. And one of the biggest, I think, victims of this democratic backsliding are women. I don't want to obviously victimize the abuser, mostly male uh, people in this conversation, but I've always felt like the violence on women, the femicides, it's an issue also male mental health. I feel like if these men were able to, find sources of perhaps mental health, they wouldn't have to resort to violence, because they seem to have a problem within themselves that they are unable to resolve, and that sort of manifests in violence and in aggression. So it's very interesting to see your perspective on Uganda, because I feel like I can relate to it in some capacity in our home country. And I don't know, to connect it to our next question, I wanted to say, I think each one of us, no matter where we're from, have different systemic issues that, connect
Yeah.
to mental health. But one thing I keep thinking about now that I'm becoming less young is that, like, how the younger generation are dealing with, for example, planetary issues that are more systemic issues like climate change. I would think that it would be very devastating and mentally draining to always have to face the fact that our planet is slowly dying. And it's not something that a lot of people talk about. It's not something that a lot of, especially older generation, acknowledge. And I was wondering if there's any like reflections of climate change and planetary issues in the work that you do, if it's any priority or if it's talked about at all.
Yeah, there is a lot of like big linkages between mental health and climate, especially because we know like things are changing, the weather's changing. We've seen earlier this year we had one of the strongest heat waves that we had then seen. And like you know how like agitating that can be, like a lot of like young people struggled.
Yeah.
Um and it's devastating. Me myself, I was also like finding myself just angry because it's too hot. But also let's say so in Uganda still earlier this year we've experienced landslides in the different communities and rural areas. We have seen like a waste collapse, and it has covered very many homes and many die. And this alone affects people because you're losing your home, you're losing where to stay, you're having like economic difficulties. So it affects you. So you're always anxious about what's going to happen, where you're going to go. So because of the climate changes, there is a lot of displacement also
Mhm.
going on amongst young people. So it is literally affecting everyone. We see when it comes to young women and girls who are starting their menstruation or in their menstruation, we see that climate affects their cycle, and sometimes this anxiety alone, sometimes a girl is worried, even if they did not engage in any sexual activity, but they're like, okay, why is it not coming? My hormones are changing, like the way they process feelings becomes different. And this is because of the different climate changes. So they directly actually affect this young person. Uh, we always also like I like to always put it in the context of like Uganda, where we understand that sometimes even accessing a hospital is going to become very difficult when there is a water flooding all over and you cannot cross. You give an example of this woman who's pregnant and she's going to give birth and she doesn't have a car and she's like in a very deep area and there is maybe water across the street and she cannot cross from point A to point B where the hospital is. And in a way, she maybe loses a child or even her life is at risk. She cannot access medication. You're looking at a young girl who is going to receive their ARVs and they cannot cross from point A to point B because there's been a bushfire somewhere. You know, that alone comes like it manifests physically, but the mental challenges that it brings, like you're always anxious about the climate, you're always anxious about, okay, I need to do this. I'm worried this is going to happen. I'm worried my house is going to fall when it floods. I'm worried, we are not going to have food for the next 1 month because there is a very strong drought and crops cannot grow. You know, that alone. And I think because like the way we have been talking about climate has been so much not vivid to young people, and sometimes they even don't know what's going on with them. They're like, they can't describe the feeling. It's just too hot and I'm agitated, but they don't know that this is the effects of the climate changes. They don't know that. So I think like they very much directly link. And it's something that we always need to talk about. I know I've done some work, I'm doing some work even currently on climate.
Mhm.
And like it's a new concept, and we're talking about sustainable housing in a face of climate, because we're seeing a lot of homes being torn down. We're seeing people lacking water. When you talk about wash programs, very many young girls are going, and boys even, are going to struggle with their wash facilities if they cannot access water, or even if they access water, it's excessive, that like there is no drainages for this to dry. And so it's a mix up. So while we acknowledge that we need the sun, we need the water, we need what, the concept of climate is in the excess of how much we receive, you know, and the regularities in it, that the irregularities, because in Uganda we have only two seasons. We have the rain season and the sun season. And in most cases, you see that this outlives the other, and you're like, no, it's supposed to be raining right now. Why isn't it raining? And you don't know what's happening. Or when it's supposed to be shining, it's raining. And then in the middle between, like, you see the rain coming in and the sun is there, and then you're like, okay, what's going on? And you don't know. So kids are going to miss on school because of that. Kids are going to, perform less. And I was telling someone about the effect of climate change on education as well, because sometimes you can't concentrate, you
Yeah.
know. And like these are all taking a toll on our brain health uh, as young people, because it is so stressful. We're hungry, we don't have food, a lot is going on. So you're going to be anxious. There is a lot of climate anxiety going on for the young people. And like also the physical aspects, when you cannot access a facility, a hospital or what, because of the climate changes, that alone also, takes a toll on your mental health, emotions. So yeah, there is a lot of strong direct correlations between mental health and climate.
Yeah. I mean, climate change is such a systemic issue that whatever conversation we have, it sort of connects to climate change. I mean, I've sort of, at least in my case, for example, again, I look back at my home country, Turkey. Sometimes, if I don't want to use that word, but it's the best way to describe it. Young people from not first world countries do not really approach the climate change anxiety as a thing of itself. Like, it doesn't manifest necessarily in the sense that, oh, young people are afraid because, the world is gonna end. It's mostly the effects of climate change that impacts them a lot. For example, food security becomes an issue, or we have a lot of forest fires in Turkey, for example, happening. That becomes an issue. So it's really interesting to have these conversations because it differs in geography to geography, but it always connects to a bigger issue. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I like that how you said sometimes people feel bad. They like it's something's happening to them. They have the anxiety, but they don't know it's because of the anxiety that comes with climate change. And I think it should be more like that. We should be more aware of this because in Turkey as well, like you said, we've been having forest fires all summer. Some cities are out of water, and I'm not sure if people know this. These are the results of climate change. These are what we've been doing to Earth. So I really appreciate having people like you on here and working at intersectional matters where we show that yes, this all connects and we all need to be aware of this. I saw a post in your on your LinkedIn while I was stalking you where said that some young people have,
I kept on saying you stalking me.
yes, I knew that would happen. I saw a post where you said that some people have, reached out to you for career advice, some, things about advice about success, and you said that most of the time they're not focused on self-discovery or understanding their own values, but rather on their appearances, the status or what others expect of them. So, as a person who works in an impactful work, what advice would you give to young people who are nervous and they having doubts about their future and they're feeling a bit hopeless? What would you say to them?
Yeah, it's a question I almost get every day, and like sometimes it also puts me on pressure to be like, okay, what's going on? But I think self-discovery is very, very important. So I don't know if it happens to you in Czechia, but we know like sometimes young people study degrees and qualifications that they do not choose for themselves, and they take a different paths because maybe it's what the scholarship offered, it's what the parents or family members asked of them to do. And even sometimes when they're going through high school, their paths are very, very different, but they're forced to do something. So you find that they have not had the chance to live a life where they discover passions
Mhm.
and ideas that they want to chase, and it becomes very, very challenging. And also, we are in an era of highlight reels. I call them highlight reels, where everyone shows the best part of their lives on the internet. And like for young people, we are seeing that, okay, this person has made it this fast. This person has, decided to do this. But you don't know sometimes that there's stories behind where this person has reached. It takes sometimes for you to discover what exactly you're going to do. And even after like many years when you've been doing very well in one arena, you reach a point and you're like, no, this does not align with the kind of person that I am. And then all of a sudden it changes and you just don't know. Or sometimes you're doing something and you see things are really not working out and it changes. So I did not study mental health to begin with personally, but I was passionate about it and like I was living it. It's a lived experience. And then I asked myself, okay, I'll talk about it. And then I started talking about it. And then later I'm like, okay, how do I monetize it? Because if I don't have money, I'm also going to be in different mental health challenges. So how do I monetize it? So because like it took me time to even understand what I was going through as a young kid, that alone led me to a lot of like discoveries. What do I like? What do I do? How do I connect with people? Um, I am a very, I wouldn't, sometimes I don't want to say introvert, but I can be an introvert in sometimes where I don't like connect with people like physically and I want to recharge a lot and what. But that alone took me a lot of discovery. So I balance it with how I appear online. Sometimes I just like be like, no, I'm not gonna do this. Let me go study about something. How do I consume information? A lot of young people don't know how to the different ways to consume information. Therefore, they don't know what to discover about themselves. What kind of music do you love? It starts as simple as that. What kind of music do you love, and why do you love it? If you are to do something where nobody is watching, would you still be proud of it? Like such a question that, okay, you guys are doing great communications and like helping like social impact ventures, communicate loudly to the world. But if one point nobody was watching, if the internet wasn't there, would you still be doing what you're doing? And for me, it goes back to that question that, oh, if nobody was watching, if there were no accolades, would I still be doing what I'm doing? And I think for me, the answer is yes, because it's something that really unveiled slowly by slowly, and it's something that I put in a lot of effort to make it work, but also like ideas and stuff come in effortlessly. Like I can easily realize my path effortlessly, and then I put in the effort to make it work. So I think it's very important. But also, I feel like we need to understand as young people that we don't have to make it there and then. Like we don't have to like make it, because we always we always start from somewhere. You know, not everybody starts the same way. We all start from somewhere, but not everybody starts the same way. There's some people who have started really from, you know, supportive background, and there's some people who have started from unsupportive backgrounds. But then we cannot all arrive at the same time sometimes. So we need to be kind to ourselves. So I always say, like, be kind to yourself at one point. And also, yes, be intentional about it, because it's also important for you to be intentional. But take a step back and reevaluate. But sometimes when I even wake up and I don't want to do anything because I feel like I'm drained, I'm like, oh God. And like, it's challenging, because you'll be shocked that for the times that I've worked with Awesome Mind Speaks, I've only like received a few fundings. Most of it has been me. And, you know, like being, you know, utilizing the smallest resources and the people within my reach. But we haven't like received funding in a very long time, you know. And then someone will ask you, how do you keep going? And you're like, you know, hard work beats talent where talent does not work hard. So I always say that you might have your talent, but if that talent doesn't work hard, the hard work, someone else is going to do it. So it's important to take a step back and reevaluate, what would you do even if it wasn't bringing in money instantly, even if it wasn't bringing in accolades. And also, given in your context, are you still able to attach humanity to the work you're doing?
Yeah.
Because sometimes also that is important. We lose our humanity because we're chasing very many ambiguous goals, and like we lose it and we don't give ourselves time. So it's always very, very important. And also, we need to identify what the definition of success really looks like. Is it like money and goods and stuff, or is it you being at peace with what you're doing and able to help the people around you and able to achieve your life and also afford it and connect with the people in the best ways that matter? So I think we need to take a step back from the pressure that a lot of successful people in our communities show, and then we kind of like, you know, work our way up.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
hustle culture probably put such a pressure on us. I want
Yeah.
our listeners to like I want to urge them to ask the question you mentioned. Would you still do what you do if no one was watching, and would you be, fine with it? And think about that for a while, and do not put a time limit on your
Yeah.
life, I would say, because I hear my friends talking about, I'm so late, to apply for masters. When am I gonna get married? When am I gonna have children? And it's too much to
Yeah.
ask yourself at once. So just, take your time, and like you said, identify what makes you happy in your life is, I think finding that is what's successful, I would say.
Yeah. I just wanted to add that also, like, the realities are real because the economies are very different. We see that the world is like changing in terms of like affordability, and sometimes it can be like really, really pressuring. So while we are talking about pursuit of success and what not to do and what to do, we need to understand that like the realities are there. Like, you need to afford the life, you need to work, you need to put in the work. So it's also important to balance the two. And yeah, because at a certain point we are seeing like, you know, economies are really like changing at a very, very fast rate. Um, yeah, so a lot, in many cases, young people also need to to earn a living. So we need to think about what opportunities are there for young people to actually, you know, utilize and then share those.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a balance between I'm sure being realistic and also, following your dreams. In life, we wish that these systemic issues weren't there and life was fair and same and equal for everybody. But yeah, unfortunately, there are a lot of things to consider. And this
Yeah.
all connects to the work that you're doing. So that's why it was a lovely chat. I really enjoyed that. And I
Thank you.
want to end it on a question that we really like asking. It's the sort of question that goes, is there a particular issue or project that you're currently passionate about or that keeps you up at night? If it could even be like your, I don't know, you had a little discussion with your friend. It doesn't really need to be anything professional, but something that really fires you up these days. Because you work on so many different things, I'm wondering if there's one particular issue that you're really passionate about these days.
That's a good question. Yeah, I've been having a lot of conversations around that. I am I'm so passionate about like lifestyle. Like I love like how we experience lifestyle. So I'm curious to explore ways on how we can create a mental health ecosystem that prioritizes lifestyle. Could be
Mm,
through events, it could be through like tour and travels, it could be, but it's something that, effortlessly achieves the bigger goal.
mm.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. Yeah, it's something that I'm trying to research on. Yeah.
When you say lifestyle, do you mean just like the daily things we do and incorporating how mental health is a part of that?
So I love, there is a time like I organized an event and it was more of like entertainment, but within it we were talking about mental health, and
Mm,
like people were singing, there was poetry, there was like service provision and what, and like when you attend this event you don't even know that okay, it's about mental health. You're just like connecting, and then before you know it, like your mental health has been impacted like positively. So
yeah.
because like I feel like every time we talk about an issue, we are talking about it in very many like concepts and serious ways that sometimes scare young people from approaching it in a very fun way. So yeah, I'm like curious, how do we, yeah, make that happen? How do we make mental health cool?
Oh, that's an
Yeah.
interesting question. I never thought.
Wonderful.
Because
Yeah.
it's like we do a lot of gender work too, for example, and you try to reach these girls and these women who don't really want to talk about gender in a like an academic or like a intellectual way, but they want to talk about their experience of, or they want to like they want to learn about it or live through it or talk about it, socialize through it. But it gets a little bit didactic when we keep on like doing projects and so
Mhm.
it's interesting. Never thought about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. Yeah. I'm trying to think about it too as well. How to achieve it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll let you know if we come up with a good idea. Maybe we can do something.
Yeah, that would be great.
By the
Yeah.
way, just out of my own curiosity, do you have a team now, or do you usually work like as an individual?
So I have like two people in the background who like support with the work. And if there is sometimes a lot going on, then I get like part-time volunteers to support.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like at this point where I'm still like looking for funding and sustainability and building structures so that I can have a team to like support
Yeah.
the things that I do. Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice to learn everything that you do. And yeah, we reached out to you because we were curious ourselves and we thought that other people would be curious about the work that you do. And you gave so much insight. So thank you so much. It was lovely to hear your work.
Thank you so much, too.
Your personal journey is also inspiring, but your advocacy, it's just so very clear to us that you care uh, about like how much thought, care, and heart you put into supporting these young people. And we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today and inspiring all of us listening right now.
Thank you, Zane, for being here.
Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you too.